welcome to Paskel's Place. Even though we're not in Paskel's Place, we're outside my house right now. Our house, not really our house, we don't own it. Anyways, we're outside practicing social distancing, which is why you're not in our audience. So we hope you enjoy and have some fun with us. And we're cold, that's why this fire's here.
It's 20 degrees.
Yeah,
it's
we're
20
cold.
degrees. But we're doing this for you.
Enjoy your fires and your warm coffee or cocoa, and wash your hands and don't get COVID-19.
Yeah.
Remember that night we cried all alone, crawled out to heaven, got no one was home, and you said to yourself, there is no one who cares. All of that time, he was right there, 'cause he never moved. It's easy to say, it's not his feet that are walking away. If anyone left, it had to be you. You may not know, but he never moved. Remember that sin that ensnared you that day, caught you in its web, took you away to a place that's so far from where you knew you should. And you said to yourself, God has left me for good. He never moved. He's here to stay. It's not his feet that are walking away. If anyone left, it had to be you. You may not trust him, but he never moved. Just because you did not hear him doesn't mean he did not speak. Because you just don't feel him doesn't mean he never leaves. He never moves. He's here to stay. It's not his feet that are walking away. If anyone else, it had to be you. You may not trust him, but he never moves. If anyone else, it had to be you. You may not love him, but he never moves.
That's funny. I'm practicing after that. Higher than the mountains that I face, so much stronger than the power of the grave. Constant in the trials and the change. One thing
Hey, welcome to the third week of social distancing with the COVID-19. It's been crazy. I'm sure people are going crazy. I know I have. I'm an extrovert, so it's been hard on me. My husband's an introvert. He's doing okay. I'm more affected. I'm supposed to be coaching track right now, and I'm feeling pretty sad because our seniors are, this is some of their last year to be able to perform, and they were stage 2 win state maybe, and that's kind of devastating, and I don't get to see them, and my students, and it's a possibility that my private school may not even make it through this whole thing and is most likely finished because it relies on fundraising. So that's pretty sad. Things happening around the world, but we're doing what we need to do to save people's lives. So hang in there. At least this week I have a better story than last week, which involved crimes against people and women. And so this week is a happier story in the chronological order that we're following through the scriptures. And anything you've missed, feel free to go back and watch from the beginning. We started in Genesis. So I just want to pick up where we left off. And remember, we were in the Judges, which is some terrible times of lawlessness from the wild, wild west, only the wild, wild east. Crazy times where a lot of people didn't have rules or didn't have a code. There was definitely no police or people like that. So there was a lot of lawlessness happening in the Judges time, the time period of the Judges. This wonderful story takes place in the middle of all that. So even though we always have bad people doing bad things and people not following God, we always have good people doing good things, following God. I know as a band, we've played all over this country and know that there are godly people everywhere. And it's just like a taste of heaven to meet Christians around the world. And so I just want to send that out to you, that even though you're probably feeling alone and isolated, you're not alone. We serve the same creator. We're under the same set of stars. You're not alone. So trust God through this difficult time and just let him use it to draw you closer to him. And so that's what I want to do, is present you a really cool story. Again, taking place during the time of the Judges. We've talked about the Judges and the things happening then. The backdrop of this story is Moab, which is located near where the tribes split up the land, and Moab is next to them. And so I wanted to bring up a couple of archaeological pieces about the land of Moab, because I always care about that kind of stuff, because I don't just take things at face value. I like to hear the background and the evidence. And so there's a guy by the name of Christopher Imes that wrote an article for Watch Jerusalem and about the archaeology. It's called Uncovering the Bible's Ancient Civilization, the Moabites. It was 2017. You can look it up online. Anyway, he said there's a few things that they found. Well, actually, quite a few things they found about Moab and the land of Moab. And he points out that there was a discovery called the Mesha Stele, which talks about one of the kings of Moab that conquered the son of Ahab. And he's like bragging on the stone how he defeated Ahab and took women, killed men and took women for slaves, to dedicated to the god Chemosh, which is their god. In fact, these people were known as the people of Chemosh. So they served this false god, and they were known to practice human sacrifice. There was also a temple that they found that was 3 stories high. That's pretty big, and for that time period, and had over 300 artifacts of worship for ritualistic worship. Some of them copied from Egyptian and some of them copied from Assyrian ways of worship. So that's a little bit of the background. Again, they were idolaters and they did practice human sacrifice, which is sad. Another thing that this author points out, and this is kind of a quote, according to Strong's Concordance, Moab, pronounced Moab in Hebrew, is elongated form of Moab, meaning literally from father. Now remember, these people are descendants of Lot and his daughters. And it was an ancestral relationship that happened after Sodom. Remember the story of Sodom, where Lot ends up going to live with these evil people of Sodom. Angel comes and tells Abraham, hey, I'm going to go down and destroy Sodom. And Abraham begs the angel, don't destroy Sodom if there's 50, 40, 30, even 10 men that are good? Would you not go? And the angel said, sure, we won't destroy the city if there are 10 good people there. But there weren't. But the angels went down, took out Lot and his wife and his 2 daughters. They tried to get their fiancés. Their fiancés laughed them out. And so they laughed. Remember, the wife turned around and died looking at the destruction of Sodom and the wrath of God being poured down on that place. And then after that, Lot became like a hermit. He took his daughters and they went way up in the mountains. And he was just like freaked out. Instead of going back to Abraham, back to God that he knew about, he just sort of turned into this weird hermit. And he wouldn't let his daughters go anywhere. So having lived in Sodom, where there was no rules, unlike the Hebrews who had definite rules against any kind of incest, the people of Sodom did it whatever they wanted. So these girls thought it would be a good idea to get their father drunk and so they could sleep with him so they could carry on their line. And of course, the older children became the tribe of Moab, and the younger daughters were the Ammonites, which at different times were definitely enemies of Israel. But that is their background. And to make it worse, the Chronological Study Bible that I have, Life Application, said that the Israelites, who, even though these were relatives and they could have mended this rift, after they got out of Egypt and during the Exodus and they came through, they tried to pass through the land of Moab, and the Moabites would not let them. So from then on, the Israelites said, you can't come to our tabernacle. You can't serve the true God with the Ark of the Covenant. You can't do it. And so that's kind of sad that rift was between them. But these people are now kind of considered the inbreds, which is what their name even means, inbreds, which is sad. And they were unable to fix the rift between them, which is also very sad. And so during the time that the judges were happening, there was also neighboring land of Moab. And the character that we're looking at, his name was Elimelech, and he was from Bethlehem, so he was of the clan of Judah. And he decided there was a famine. And of course, the famine came because the people were worshiping idols. But for whatever reason, this guy decided, my family's starving. He took his 2 boys and his wife Naomi to the land of Moab to look for work or food. I don't know. They were there for 10 years. During that time, the boys grew up and married Moabite girls. And the Bible doesn't tell us what happened, but all 3 of the men died, the father and the 2 young men. We don't know what happened to these men. The Bible doesn't say. It could be natural causes, because I would assume that if they were murdered or killed by the Moabites, there would have been more resentment in them leaving. We also know that the women did not have children. The young women did not have children, which means maybe they were all starving. Maybe their body fat was below 12% and they were unable to have children, because starving women do not produce the right hormones that allow you to get pregnant. That's why in concentration camp situations, a lot of women will not get pregnant unless they have enough food. So maybe it was starvation, because we do know that Naomi heard that there was food now back in Bethlehem area. So she decides she's going to go back. So she has her 2 daughters-in-law with her, and they were all together, and they pack up the household and they are headed back on the road. Now, I don't know what happened to cause her to do this, but maybe as they were leaving, the young women were like mourning the fact that they're leaving their homeland. We don't know what happened, but all of a sudden, Naomi says, go home to your families. And I want you to go home. I have no obligation for you. You may leave. And that it also says they all broke down and wept. So these women were very close to each other. They had endured hardship together. They were bonded together. And it said they all 3 broke down and wept. So they are processing what they should do. And then they say, no, we are not going to leave you. But she says, I have no sons. I have nothing to offer you. I have nothing left for you. And you need to go home and remarry. And you don't have to go with me. I want you to go home. At that point, one of the women, Orpah, does turn and go. But she's been urged to do that. the other woman named Ruth refuses to leave. And it's a pretty poetic part of this piece where she says to Naomi, where you go, I will go. Where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God will be my God. Where you die, I will die, and there will I be buried. I mean, that is just beautiful devotion that she has. In fact, she goes on to say, may the Lord punish me if anything other than death separates the two of us. I mean, that is devotion. This woman is incredibly devoted to this woman. And you can see by the way she refers to the Lord that she has now entered into the relationship with the one true God of Israel. And so that's pretty exciting. She has already adopted Naomi's God, the God of Israel, the true God. So she says, I'm going with you. You can't get rid of me, which is very noble. Awesome piece of that story. So they travel back to Bethlehem. When they get there, people have heard that Naomi's there. They're excited. They run out to meet her. Naomi, Naomi. And she's like, don't even call me Naomi. My life is bitter. God has made my life bitter. Call me Mara. So she is in a depression. She is in a low place. She feels like God has abandoned her, but she doesn't stop believing him, but she feels like for some reason she's being punished. And she doesn't even know that this beautiful girl, Ruth, is a more gift to her than she could ever imagine. But she's in a bad place. She's lost her husband. She's lost her 2 sons. Who wouldn't be depressed after that? But she's in a seriously depressed state. And anyone who's under the stress that she would be under, there's a physiological thing called attention narrowing, where when you're not under stress, you see a lot of options. But as you get stressed, your options diminish down to very few options, and you don't even think straight, and you don't look straight. And many people commit suicide in this state. And she was at the end, and maybe she knew it was against Jewish law to commit suicide, but you can tell she was like, I'd be okay to die right now. She was just that low. You can feel her pain. So, and some of us, I've been through a dark depression. It is hard to see through it, but you tie a knot and you hang on in Jesus' name. And the Bible says when you suffer, just to keep doing good. That's what the Bible tells us to do. When you suffer tremendous pain, to keep doing good. And so she just keeps hanging on, and she's got this Ruth. Well, she gets there. They have no way to have food. I think it does say she has some land, so possibly they had a house to live in, but they have no work. So you get the idea, too, that Naomi must be sort of crippled or something wrong with her, because Ruth takes it upon herself to go start gleaning the fields for food. Now, back then, there was no welfare program, and so the people tried to take care of themselves. And one of the things they would do is if you were a landowner, whatever was left in the field, the poor people would take it. And they would have to come and glean it out of your field. And that's how the poor people were fed. Or if you had a family member, you would put it on yourself to help your family member. So Ruth is told that Boaz is a family member and he has a big field. And Naomi tells her, just go to his field, glean food for us. So she goes to that field, and she's probably the youngest person out there that's not one of the working people, out gleaning after everyone's done. So people notice her. In fact, Boaz says to his men, who is that woman? Who's the young woman out in the field? And they say, oh, that's Naomi's daughter-in-law. She's just getting food for them. And Boaz is very impressed that the daughter-in-law of this woman, who's not even an actual relative of hers, is gleaning for them, for the two of them. And he approaches her and talks to her. You are an honorable woman. So Ruth had developed a reputation of this woman of honor, this noble woman. And Boaz then went extra step to make sure she was safe. He told his men, leave her alone, don't touch her. And he went to her and said, when you need a drink, you come and drink with my people. And she was like, thank you for your kindness. And then he told his people, leave a little extra food for her to glean. So he's taking care of her. And of course, Ruth goes home and tells Naomi of the generosity of this kind person. And she spends the whole harvest season with plenty of food, plenty to eat. Everybody sees what a great person she is. And at the end, it's coming to the end of the harvest time, and now they're threshing out the grain. And Naomi's thinking, I got to do something for my girl. We're at the end of harvest season. So she thinks that this relationship needs a little encouraged along. So she tells Ruth, this is what you need to do. You need to go put on your best dress, take a bath, and you need to go to the threshing floor and make yourself present to Boaz. Now, at this time period, the only people that go to a threshing floor were usually just prostitutes. So she's taking a huge risk here, but she's going as to ask for mercy, for him to be her kinsman redeemer. Basically, she's proposing marriage in a way. So she does just what Naomi says. She sees where he lies down after threshing. She goes by his feet and puts a corner of the blanket over her. He's asleep. He wakes up and finds her there and says, what are you doing? And she said, I've come to ask for mercy that you will be my kinsman redeemer. And he's very impressed and very flattered, because he said, you're young. You could have gone after younger men. You could have gone after richer men. And here you are. And she says, she's asking him, I want you to be my kinsman redeemer. And he says, I will do the best that I can, but there is another relative that has first rights to you and to the field and to the property. So he says, I will do whatever I can tomorrow to see if I can marry you. And he said, in the meantime, stay under my blanket. But it says she slept at his feet. So some people think that maybe something happened, but he is very clear to say, you're an honorable woman. Stay here to be safe. I'll leave in the morning, and I will make sure no one talks about you. I will make sure that your honor and your reputation is protected. So it's very clear that he would not have taken advantage of this woman. He's too respectful, and he respects her too much. But he says, I will find out right away. He would have not dishonored her, and it doesn't say anything like that in the scripture that he would have. So anyway, the next day he goes to the city gate, and she leaves in the morning, and he gives her a bunch of grain. But then he goes to the city gate, which is the place where you would have found relatives or people. It's also like the city hall, the place where you would have made contracts. And he finds this relative, and he says, by the way, Naomi has a field to sell. So Boaz tells this relative that he has first legal kinsman rights to Naomi's field if he wants to buy it. And at first the relative said, yes, I want to buy that field, because he's thinking about his inheritance and expanding his inheritance. And then Boaz says, but if you buy the field, you also need to marry Ruth, the daughter-in-law, to procreate the lineage of Elimelech, which is who the field belonged to. And at that point, the relative is like, no, that would complicate my own estate. I don't want to do that. You go ahead and take the field and the girl. And so Boaz is, of course, relieved and happy that he can now redeem the girl. And they seal the deal by taking the sandal. The other guy gives him a sandal, and that's a way of signing a contract at the city gate that he couldn't come back and say, hey, I decided I want the field after all. And he couldn't do that because he'd sealed the contract. So Boaz then has legal rights to marry Ruth, and they marry, and they have a son. His name is Obed, and he's a very special son who is actually the grandfather of King David and the great grandfather of Jesus Christ. So it's a pretty cool story, which we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But I want to point out some great things about Boaz that we can learn from this story, and that is what a man of God should be like. And in this situation, we see that Boaz, number one, one of the things is he cares about his community. He is giving to the poor. He is helping the poor. He is taking care of people in need. So he's a community-minded man. He's not a selfish man. Secondly, he's a hard worker. We don't know how old he is. We know he's not a young man. He might have been in his late 30s or early 40s. We don't know. We know that we presume he has no wife, or maybe he lost his wife, or he has no children to speak of besides this son that we know of. And so it's not known why he's not married, but it's assumed that he isn't. And so maybe he was so busy after the famine working his land that he just never took time to get a family, or maybe he lost his wife in the famine. We don't know. But anyway, the other good thing about him is that he's attracted to Ruth because of her character. And that's awesome. I mean, how many men go looking for a woman because of character? So that's really important. He is also careful not to dishonor or discredit her, not to mess with her reputation. He is upholding her as somebody of high value, which is that's so honorable and very rare today. That also he upholds the covenant laws of the one true creator God, and he's holding to those covenants, and he follows the rules of his people and tries to keep order in that way. And he cares very much about women, especially these two women that he doesn't have to care about. He could have cared about his own inheritance more than them. He could have cared about his own estate, but no, he puts them above his own. And because he honors God, God honors him. And he's the great grandfather of the Lord Jesus Christ. Pretty awesome. And he is a protector. He protects the people that need protection. So that is another great and godly characteristics of this great guy. And again, he had no idea that he was going to be the grandfather of Jesus Christ. And that's pretty amazing because he's the kinsman redeemer and Jesus is our kinsman redeemer. We also learned some great things about Ruth, who was known, her reputation was amazing, that she was an honorable woman, that she was attracted to Boaz because he was a man of character. And she picked him out because he was a man of character. So that's amazing. It's said of her in the Bible, in the scriptures, that people talked about her as if she, this daughter-in-law, was more valuable than 7 sons. To be worth more than 7 sons is a phenomenal statement about this woman. Because back then you wanted to have an heir and a spare, and if you had 7, you're covered. But this woman having a reputation of being better than 7 sons, that's amazing. Because women did not have that kind of value at this time period, which is sad, because this woman was a gift from God. And even though Naomi, when she was going through the terrible depression, didn't see what she had, God was already taking care of her. He was already working it out. She had no idea that she would also be the great mother of Jesus Christ. So amazing how God takes care, gives us hope for now and hope for the future, but there are times we just need to trust him. That's one of the lessons of this. And then, of course, there's the character lessons that are so deep in this story. This couple was not self-absorbed. They were very kind and caring about other people and cared about doing what's right. And that is awesome that they're in the lineage of Christ. Very exciting. So it gives us a message of hope. And I am so grateful when I look at this story because, like I said last time, I've got a lot of great men in my life. My husband, my father, my father-in-law. And, one time in my life for my nephews, I wrote a song called Man After You. And it described this kind of a person, interestingly. And a lot of the men in my family emulate that, including my own son. And I wrote the song before he was even born. And then my son-in-law has these characteristics. And so I'm very grateful that in my family there is a line of men that seek to serve God above all things. And that is a real blessing to me. And I know that when I'm gone from this earth, that there will be people my kids will be carrying on the torch of the truth. And that is so valuable because that's the most important thing, that we leave behind a legacy that teaches people the truth. Not about us, but about what's right, about the truth, about God, about Jesus. So wrapping that up this week, I just want to say that there is hope. And I know that when we're going through hard times, it's hard to see it. I'm in a place of insecurity as well right now, job-wise. But I'm trusting God, and I know he has a plan. And I'm going to hold on to that hope and know that there's nothing is hidden from God. Nothing comes as a surprise to him. He's already working. I just have to know that even though I can't see it, he's working. He's taking care of it. He's bringing me time to spend with you and spend with my family, hopefully eventually, and to really draw closer to my husband, to God, to get some things done. So I am embracing whatever he has. And if we suffer, I just embrace the suffering, even that we can draw closer to Jesus Christ. And so I just know that I'm praying for you, and I send a blessing out to you, and I will keep you up in my prayers. Even now, when we're done, I'm going to stop and pray for you. So love you. See you next week. I will keep these things coming. Check out our other little social distancing videos that we've been posting on YouTube. And we're trying to make it so you can have a laugh once in a while too, because we're crazy that way. And we love you. Take care.
Well, this train is bound for heaven. All you people get on board. We're gonna have a party to celebrate the love. We'll stop at every depot to bring more people in. 'Cause I'm aboard this heaven train and step out of your sin. Well, this train is bound for heaven. All you people get on board. Gonna have a party to celebrate the Lord. We'll stop at every depot, bring more people in. I'm aboard this heaven train. Step out of your sin. Well, I don't know if you noticed, but the world's going mad. People feeling crazy, saying that it's right. Say what? That long black train is taking all our people to the grave. Time to let the last ones know the Lord has come to save. We gotta start over.
Stop! My hands are freezing.
3, 2,
Wait.
1.
Wait, I don't think she got the memo
Okay,
yet.
ready?
I'm
3, 2, 1.
Oh, we're doing that. That's okay. You can cut this in. Okay. Perfect.
Okay, wait. What are you doing? I'm not gonna go.
Just start. No. It's okay. It'll be fun.
Fire before us, you're the brightest. You will lead us through the storm. Fire before us, you're the brightest. You will lead us through the storm. My lighthouse, shining in the darkness. I will follow you, my lighthouse, I will trust the promise. You will carry me safe to shore, safe to shore, safe to shore.
That was awful, but the ending was okay.
My hand just.
That was awful. Let's do it.
I mean, no. What?
That was awful.
What do you mean?
Should we do the whole song again?
Mm-mm. No.